This video is done by professionals. Don't do anything you see on the video because YouTube will be mad.
Now, if you've been growing for a while, you might have found some techniques that help you be able to get some nice, big fat harvests. But you may still be struggling. In this video, I'm going to break down 7 things that if you're not following, well, your yields may suck. Stay tuned. If you're new here, my name is Rob and we talk all things herb. Today in particular, we're going to be going over 7 things that will make or break your yield. Now, there's a lot of different variables that come into play, and of course, genetics being one of the largest ones. So before we even get into the list, if you're growing something that's known to be a small yielder and you think that you're gonna make a square a circle, well, it's not gonna happen. I'm sorry.
Duh.
There may be ways to increase your yield. There may be things you can do over time, but thinking you're gonna be crushing it and getting a massive harvest with genetics that don't yield massive buds, well, if you believe that, I got a lakefront property available for you in Muskegon Heights. But before we jump into it, I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsors who help make videos like this for free available for you guys and provide some amazing discounts. If you haven't seen the V-Grow system, you are missing out. It's VivoSun's all-in-one smart grow system that basically thinks for you. Automated controls, built-in sensors, precise climate management. It's like having a grow tech in your tent 24/7. And paired with the grow camera, man, it is a game changer. You can monitor your plants in real time from anywhere, so even if you're not in the garden, you are in the garden. I've been using it to keep an eye on everything from seedling stretch all the way to flower development, and it has been absolutely clutch. VivoSun also has a ton of awesome innovative gear that goes beyond that too, from quality tents to fans, lighting, hydro gear, all that. And they're consistently improving on things on the back end as well. So if you're ready to take your grow to the next level, check out VivoSun. The link is in the description, and trust me, you'll see why they're becoming one of the go-to brands for home growers around the world. You can use discount code CLtv on their website or CLtv Watch over on Amazon. If you're looking for some quality genetics from a variety of different breeders, Season's got your back. Use discount code CLtv at checkout to help the channel and save yourself some yen. So diving right into it, if you don't have a good system, you won't have a good yield. If you're just winging every grow with no real plan and no real process, well, this is going to be an issue for a lot of people. I think oftentimes people will watch videos on YouTube and they see people doing these things and they don't see us with notebooks or tracking everything on an app or on a doc system. And oftentimes it makes them feel that we're just freestyling everything, that we're just the Lil Wayne of the garden and we just do everything off the cuff. Well, unfortunately, it's not really as easy as it looks. And in that case, you're probably getting mistaken. Random waterings, guessing when to flip, no training schedule. These are all things that can really hurt you. Putting together a process on how you're going to be growing is extremely important. A standard operation of procedures is something that a lot of people overlook when they're in their garden, and they feel that only commercial grows need this. When you're first getting started, honestly, I feel like this is something that all growers need. Over time, that SOP gets ingrained in your head and you don't really have to go to it every single day, but I'm telling you, as somebody who's been growing for 20 years, I still slip up, I still run into issues, and oftentimes it's my own fault because I'm not following my own SOP. You need transplant timing, feeding timing, even watering timing, depending on how you're going about your process. When you're going to be doing defoliation or other plant training. These are all things that can't just be shot from the hip. And sometimes it may work and you may do okay with there, but I'm telling you, you can maximize what you're doing if you dial things in with a real system and a real process. Successful growers don't just grow plants, they run systems. Document your process, build an SOP, run it, and refine it. And I'm telling you, you're gonna knock things out of the park. Now, guesswork also leads into things like veg. Bad veg equals bad flower. This is just how it goes. If you're flipping your plants into flower and they're not healthy, they're not strong, they're not grown to basically yield a good amount of flower, well, essentially, you're setting yourself up for failure. In the vegetative cycle, that's when we're going to be building a foundation. If we don't build that proper foundation, we're not going to be able to build proper buds. Stretchy plants, weak stems, these are things that can potentially happen with genetics, but more times than not, it's a poor veg. Honestly, I've been there in the past where I have my light too high or I've got it too low depending on the circumstances. I'm not doing proper training, I don't have good airflow, and these are just things that happen if you're kind of just winging it. Again, that SOP needs to be dialed in. But in veg, if we're not doing proper plant training, it's a mouthful, and we're not making sure we're taking care of that plant to transition into flower, then we're really going to be losing everything overall. Because all that training, all the work that you do, this is what's going to help basically win the race when you're into flower. One big thing is working towards tighter internodes. Depending on what kind of lighting you're using, you can dial in the spectrum and work more towards that white or the blue spectrum. This is going to make sure that your nodes are a little tighter and they're not going to have such a stretch. We want to make sure that we have explosive root growth, that everything is dialed in good and we're not dealing with stress before we flip into flower. You want to make sure that you don't have any root stress or any issues when you're going into flower, of course. And if you have these problems, take a little bit longer before you flip. Even if you have to chop the top of that plant a little bit to extend your veg time, I highly recommend it. And remember, don't rush to flip. Stack your structure first and then move over into flower. Now in veg is when training time often happens, and bad training equals wasted potential. If your canopy looks like a jungle, you're wasting light and airflow, and this is something that's going to be detrimental to your overall harvest, leaving you with a bunch of larvae, unwanted flower that may be good for extraction, but it's not going to be good for us flower consumers. I do feel that oftentimes people overlook this, thinking that if they do too much trimming or they do too much defoliation or pruning, however you want to word that, you can potentially run into stress in your plant. There is a fine balance where you don't want to go too far, but honestly, oftentimes people seemingly underestimate that growth that you're getting into flower. There'll be explosive veg growth still, and you'll see that plant expand more, those leaves get bigger, and basically that jungle take over even more. So if you're not doing that training early on, this can be potentially an issue as you flip into flower. Weak branches flop, uneven canopies don't do well, and that underneath just larf is not worth anything. It doesn't add up good and it sucks to trim. More times than not, people want to focus on the tops, and that's myself included. You could do more training like low stress training, utilizing the super cropping technique or the screen of green technique to really be able to bend things down and get a flat, even canopy. Now, a lot of growers will top early to help build a strong foundation. Depending on the cultivar, I may top, sometimes I don't, it just depends. Not all strains are going to be the same, some take better than others, it just really depends on the genetics. And another thing I'd recommend is don't wait for support. Adding a trellis in veg can definitely help you. When you flip into flower, putting that trellis on works, but making sure that your plant is grown strong enough to hold these nice big fat buds is important. And sometimes they may not have the strength alone, so adding some support can be crucial. There's bamboo, trellis, yo-yos, whatever you can figure to hold it up is going to definitely help you in the long run. But make sure you have something for stability, because if we are getting these big fat yields, sometimes you get big fat buds and they do lean over. A crucial element to have a larger yield is definitely dialing in things like your dryback. No control over drybacks is definitely detrimental, and it's something I didn't learn until later in my gardening. Utilizing automated watering, dialing in exactly when you feed and how you water is really important, but making sure that you know how much moisture is in your soil is definitely another factor. Using soil moisture meters, even just lifting up the pot, dialing in your actual process is huge. If you don't have this figured out, your plants could get oversaturated, and this can definitely lead to less yields. Underwatering and overwatering are both major problems, but making sure that you get that dryback process so that your plant can go from saturated to drying back just enough where it's not stressing it in a negative way, but in a positive stress. This is where you have that crop steering and could really push plants' yield and overall production in general. Those controlled drybacks essentially let your roots breathe, which then you feed them with a purpose. And this is going to help you be able to push your plant further and definitely increase those yields. Now, utilizing drybacks, especially early in flower, will help your plants focus more on generative growth than vegetative growth. This is going to make sure that you're stacking flower more than you're stacking leaves. And that's going to be something that'll help you get a better yield as we're transitioning into flower and having less of that explosive veg growth essentially. Now again, you're going to want to track pot weight, utilize things like sensors, and overall document what you're doing. When you kind of figure out this cycle and the process, it'll make it a lot easier to kind of just freestyle things, so to speak. Not completely, because again, you want an SOP, but you won't have to go in there every single time with a tool to dial things in. You'll be able to get a feeling of it by just lifting the pot or knowing which day that you often water to get that exact dryback that you're after. Now, of course, things like relative humidity do play an impact into this, but if you dial in your environment already, it won't be a problem. But if you don't control your roots, you don't control your harvest.
That's called motherfucking bars!
Next thing that I'd make sure that you're paying attention to is microenvironments and lighting balance. Most grow tents have hidden zones, hot tops, cold bottoms, and dead air spots. That means buds of the same plant might be growing in a totally different environment. If your lower canopy is sitting in a low humidity and weak light, it's not stacking that weight. Flatten your canopy and spread it evenly, and that way you're able to have that same zone getting the same even light and the overall environmental impact. And don't just max out your PPFD, you want to balance it. Depending how close your light is to the canopy, the PPFD may need to be a little bit lower. If it's a little further away, the PPFD could be a little bit higher. And depending on the genetics you have, they can react differently to different light intensities and light spectrums. These are things that are extremely important factors if you want to maximize your plant's potential and especially maximize those yields. Light intensity without coverage is just wasted energy. And honestly, it could potentially hurt your plants. So make sure that you're dialing in that light and you're making sure you're paying attention to those microclimates. Because you may think that your VPD is, let's say, 1.12 kPa, and actually it's 0.6 underneath the canopy. The next thing I have been guilty of multiple times and still to this day is overthinking, and on the other side, undercaring. There's a fine line between both. Most growers are either too hands-on or not hands-on enough, and this could be a big problem in your garden depending on how many plants you're growing, the strains you're growing, and the process that you have. Overfeeding, overwatering, changing too many variables, those will wreck your plants, and you don't want to run into that. The solution? Watch your plants, understand how they grow, understand signs of stress and signs of happiness. These are things that are definitely going to help you over time, and knowing that things don't show up immediately. You could do something today and it may not show the results tomorrow. Sometimes it could take a week or two to show, and honestly, sometimes it can be 24 hours. It just really depends on what you're doing. There's so many variables that throwing too many things at it can become a big problem. And you may run into a situation where you don't even know what you did wrong because you did so many things. I often see people getting stash blend and then also changing their soil or changing their base nutrients and then having an issue and not knowing at all what happened. Well, too many variables could equal too many problems. You want to make sure you document these things and you're not going too far one way and not throwing too many different things at the plant at once. If things do seem a little bit off, essentially we're going to check the EC of the runoff or a slurry mix. With a slurry mix, we're just going to grab a little bit of the soil with water that we know the pH of. We're going to mix it in and measure the difference. Now, of course, this depends on what kind of media you're using. The runoff may vary with the cation exchange if you're in cocoa, but with soil, how I'm growing right now, I'm able to test this out pretty easily. And remember, it's not always about doing more, it's about doing right. And number 7, one that has been a thing that I've run into in the past, and I know a lot of new growers have, and even us who have been pretty experienced as well, and that's coasting in the last 3 weeks of flower. Taking that foot off the pedal, relaxing too much. This can be an absolute killer for a lot of people. The last few weeks are when your buds really swell, and it's when things are finishing up. So it's just as important as any other week, if not more important than any other week. So it blows my mind that even myself have gotten too lax at times. If you chill out too soon, you leave yields on the table. You want to keep on pushing through. Cut back your nitrogen, increase potassium, keep your EC strong and those drybacks tight. And most importantly, airflow, airflow, airflow. You need that airflow like crazy. If you don't have it, you may potentially run into bud rot. And this is something that, man, I tell you, is one of the worst feelings. At the end of the cycle, after you've spent months to grow this plant and it's got mold or bud rot, that's a motivation killer. And a lot of people do stop growing after that. And I've had times in the past where I've seen buddies and acquaintances that I thought were gonna kill it, give up from having this happen. And those are the guys who grow these big, fat, massive colas and don't realize that tending to them at the end is just as important as the beginning. You wanna finish strong and get to the end. Don't be that person who's celebrating at the end of the race before you cross the finish line. You gotta be able to finish. And you wanna make sure that you're drying and curing right, of course. And if you're not sure how you go about that, well, I do have a video up here that can really help you out.